Today on the show, I will tell you the story of how I became a lap swimmer at the Fort Meigs YMCA at the age of 35 and how I met my swim coach and friend, Mary Chris K. I'll also tell you about the newly created Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund and how you can donate to it. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast. This is episode 154. I'm your host, Perrysburg resident and lap swimmer, Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is a resource for Perrysburg residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. Our website is perrysburgpodcast.com. I don't like to bury the lead, so let me just start by saying that a foot injury led me to swimming. A foot injury led me to swimming. And there is a whole lot more to that story, and I will get to it. But before I talk about myself, I would like to talk about Mary Chris K, my swim coach, and the Aquatics Fund created in her honor. The Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund gives community members like you and me a way to support swimming and aquatics programs at the Fort Meigs YMCA. The YMCA of Greater Toledo works with the Greater Toledo Community Foundation to make sure that donations to the Aquatics Fund support the Fort Meigs YMCA aquatics programs. I hope you followed that. So if you donate to this fund, the money will go to the Fort Meigs YMCA aquatics programs. There is a link to donate to this fund in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. Now, if you're listening to this before Thursday, July 2nd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you know Mary Chris, or you would like to celebrate her and the launch of this fund, head over to the Fort Meigs YMCA. Mary Chris and her family will be there on Thursday, July 2nd at 2 p.m. to greet friends, family, swimmers, and donors. Now, if you don't know Mary Chris, you'll hear about her during this podcast episode, but I will give you just a short introduction right now. Mary Chris K is a Perrysburg resident, wife, mom of 9, grandma to more than 40 and counting, a retired nurse, a beloved longtime local swim instructor, a competitive masters swimmer, and a senior Olympian. She is a great lady and a good friend. I would like to thank Perrysburg resident Sally Galagoski for nominating Mary Chris for this endowment. The purpose of this fund is to honor Mary Chris K's impact and carry her spirit forward through aquatics programs at the Fort Meigs YMCA. Mary Chris has spent years helping people feel welcome in the water. She taught, coached, encouraged, and took people under her wing. She helped build a culture of swimming at the Fort Meigs YMCA. That's not easy to do, to create a culture, but she did. She created a culture around swimming. She wasn't just teaching people how to swim, but she helped them feel like they belonged there. Feeling like you belong matters. Without special people, special places like the Fort Meigs YMCA just don't feel the same. Mary Chris is one of those people who made the YMCA feel like the right place for a lot of swimmers, including me. I was going through a tough time with an injury. I showed up to swim, and she made me feel like I was in the right place. It was awesome. When I spoke to Whitney Keeler from the YMCA of Greater Toledo this week, she talked about how Mary Chris embodies the Y's mission and the pillars of the Y: youth development, healthy living, and strengthening communities. And when Whitney said that, that felt exactly right to me. I've seen Mary Chris work with youth. I definitely know she's all about healthy living, and she has strengthened the Perrysburg community. Mary Chris's story is one of those stories that shows what makes the YMCA special. The YMCA believes in the potential of people, and Mary Chris lived that through her work, her friendships, and her example. This fund, the Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund, is a way to recognize her, celebrate her, and help continue the kind of work she cared about so much. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes to hear about Mary Chris K and the Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund. Again, a link to donate is in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. At this time, what I'd like to do is I'll tell you the story of how I became a lap swimmer at the Fort Meigs YMCA. Mary Chris, of course, was a big part of it, and I am so glad that we met. Like I said in the introduction, a foot injury led me to swimming. I did not actually intend to become a swimmer. I remember sitting on the exam table in my podiatrist's office in the fall of 2013, and he said to me, "No high impact exercise for at least 2 months, Kim. You need to let your foot heal. No running, no biking, no spin class, no weightlifting, no jumping rope, and no box jumps." And I'll tell you, that was hard to hear. I was pretty active up until then. I was actually 35 at the time. I am 47 now. But back then, I had just finished trying CrossFit, which is really intense. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do physically, other than giving birth. But before that, I was an athlete. I was a cross country runner in high school. I was a cheerleader. I did track and I loved biking. When I became a busy mom, I switched to spin classes and weights, and I remained active. Over the years, what happened was, and I'm kind of laughing, is I didn't see this coming either. I accidentally broke the protective capsule around one of the joints in my left foot. You can call this type of an injury a repetitive motion injury. Maybe you've had a repetitive motion injury of some sort yourself. Specifically, I broke my second metatarsal phalangeal joint, or the second MTP joint, as they call it. I didn't even know I had a second MTP joint, and here I broke it. I was not happy. Back to the exam table at the doctor's office. Let's keep the story going. After I got the bad news about switching to no impact exercise, which I had never considered before, I was thinking, well, how do I stay active? Yoga? Pilates? I didn't, no offense to yoga and Pilates, but I kind of like the higher impact stuff. So I got kind of snarky and I said, "Well, what's left? Are you saying I need to become a swimmer?" And the doctor said, "Yeah, that'd be fine." He made it sound so easy. "Swimming's fine. Just go ahead and find a pool and jump in it, Kim." I know he didn't say it like that. And I know he meant well, really. But nothing's that easy. Back in the 90s, I was in high school, right? Graduated high school in 1996. And somewhere in the 90s, I wanted to join the swim team at my high school, but I didn't do it. I didn't have a car. I'd always be bumming a ride. I didn't know the coach. I tried it once. Nobody paid any attention to me. I didn't feel comfortable. And plus, I didn't know what I was doing. I took swim lessons as a kid. I was even a lifeguard as a teenager. It was a sweet job. I loved it. We had a great crew. But I didn't feel like, as an adult, a 35-year-old adult, that I had the stroke development for swim workouts. So I couldn't figure out how I was going to just swim freestyle for an hour at a time. Plus, I didn't know any workouts in addition to only knowing just like one stroke. I needed help. Since I was already a member at the Fort Meigs YMCA and I knew that they had a lap pool, I looked at classes offered there. That's where I started. So in the 2013-2014 timeframe, there were 3 lap swim classes offered. There was beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And I told myself, once I get my kids back in school after Christmas break, I'm going to join the beginner class. And that's what I did. For years, I kept a swim journal. It's kind of like a diary, but all it was I reused one of my kids' school supplies. I used one of their notebooks from first grade. My kids are in their 20s now. So, anyways, I grabbed one of their notebooks and I started writing. I kept a swim journal about learning how to swim, really learning how to swim, not just my childhood swimming. I really learned how to swim at the Fort Meigs YMCA. I recorded the date, lessons learned, mileage, favorite workouts, classmates' names, and so on. And the first entry ever is January 14th, 2014. That is the first day of the beginner class at the Fort Meigs YMCA in the lap pool. A lot of reflections from this episode come from that journal. Now, just to give you a heads up, this episode is not a memoir. I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to just read the journal to you. Instead, what I'd like to do is talk about the most important person I met when I started swimming at the Fort Meigs YMCA. Her name is Mary Chris Kay. When I showed up for my first day of beginner lap swim class on January 14th, 2014, Mary Chris Kay was the instructor. We'll just call her Mary Chris from here on out. After my first 30-minute beginner class, Mary Chris promoted me to the intermediate class. And I say this with a smile on my face because I didn't expect that, and I was kind of proud. So I stayed for the 45-minute intermediate class after that 30-minute beginner class, and it went well. According to my swim journal, Mary Chris tried to talk me into staying for the advanced class too. And it's so funny looking back on it. Like, it was a little too far. She had a lot of confidence in me. Anyways, I politely declined because we didn't know each other at the time. And I told her that I wanted to stay in the intermediate class for the 8-week session. At the time, classes were 8 weeks in length. My goal was to improve my endurance and refine my strokes and learn all the things. There's so much more to swimming than I ever knew. When I was in college, I think I knew freestyle, backstroke, and how to badly do breaststroke. But I learned that there was all kinds of strokes, drills, and kicks. There's all kinds of stuff to mix it up and make it more interesting. There was fly, back, breast, and free. There were all kinds of drills for each of those, and the kicks on both your stomach and your back that have to do with all of those. And I learned how to use all the toys. And I'll tell you, the toys were a lot of fun and helped keep me coming back. They kept it interesting. The pull buoys, I had only used those in college badly, apparently. I didn't put it in the right place between my legs. I had used fins kind of for fun in friends' pools, but I learned how to really use long fins. I learned the right way to use a kickboard and so much more. By the time I finished intermediate class, I had a swim bag, which is like a book bag. And in my bag, I had stuff. I was a real swimmer. I had a swim cap. I had prescription goggles. No, I didn't get the expensive ones from the eye doctor, but I told them I needed some prescription swim goggles, and they told me how to identify the correct prescription for the reader version, kind of like going to a drugstore. So, anyways, I had swim cap, prescription goggles, fins, long fins. I had a kickboard and a pull buoy. And over time, I accumulated all kinds of other stuff too, like prescription earplugs. Yes, I went to an audiologist and I got some earplugs because I had some ringing in my ears from swimming. And I got those prescription earplugs and it canceled out the ringing. I was a happy girl. In my swim bag, I also had ponytail holders and a few other things as well. I know I sound excited talking about my swim bag. I like to organize stuff, so unfortunately, I get a little excited about that. Anyways, at the end of that 8-week intermediate session, I was hooked. I liked swimming and I wanted to keep going. I got promoted to the advanced class, so I started doing that. I was also allowed to return to spin class, so I was biking again indoor. I started going to a spin class right before advanced lap swim class. In fact, it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I would spin for an hour from I think it was like 9:15 to 10 or 10:15, and then I'd hurry up, get my swimsuit on and rinse off, of course, and then jump in the lap pool for advanced lap swim class. It was a lot of fun, and boy, I was tired after that. It's kind of fun to look back on what I was doing when I was 35. I had a different schedule, and I had more energy, and I loved doing those double classes. Once I got into advanced lap swim class, I continued to learn and grow. I was able to cover larger distances in shorter periods of time, and Once I really got to know Mary Chris as an instructor, I thought of her as my swim coach. And a lot of my fellow swimmers would kind of refer to her as Coach Mary Chris or the class instead of a class. We called it swim practice. So, anyways, I forever thought of Mary Chris as my swim coach after that. And that's a very apt term. It's a very appropriate term because she talked me into competing at a few meets too. And when you compete, it helps to have a coach. So Mary Chris was my swim coach there at those meets. And I did well. I got ribbons. As I looked through my swim journal, I actually found some of those ribbons, and that was really cool. And there's a lot that I could say about the swim journal. Again, this is not a memoir that I'm going to read to you, but as I looked back at that swim journal, I realized how much she taught me and how much has stayed with me. She taught me the four big strokes: fly, back, breast, and free. I kind of knew how to do three out of the four previously, but I got really good at all four. She taught me drills and kicks and all the things that would make me stronger as a swimmer. She introduced me to those fins, which made me freaky fast in the water, and they were a joy to use. I had so much fun with fins, and I still have them in my swim bag to this day. Mary Chris also helped me breathe, which is kind of a serious topic. I have asthma, and I experience what I call oxygen hunger. If you have asthma or emphysema or any breathing disorder, you may know what I mean by oxygen hunger. I just am starved for oxygen. So I had to teach myself not to freak out, and Mary Chris really helped with that. She helped calm me down and learn the basics. By the basics, I mean she helped me learn how to alternate sides when doing freestyle. You breathe on the right, you do a couple strokes, you breathe on the left, do your strokes. Breathe on the right, stroke, and then on the left. So, anyways, I was alternating at first. And when I got good at alternating, I was breathing every third stroke. Hope that makes sense. So I got good at breathing every other stroke and then every third. And I started alternating my head on the rights and the left. And it got easier over time. And then when you put in a pull buoy, you can actually breathe less as you go forward. So I was breathing every fifth stroke with the pull buoy, but it wasn't natural at first. I remember her telling me just go down the lane, breathing every third. And then on the way back, breathe every fourth. And then on the way to the side again, every fifth stroke. So hopefully you follow that. The anxiety that I experienced when I first started finally quieted, and my confidence grew. I just needed somebody to talk me through that. And that person was Mary Chris. Mary Chris taught a lot of swimmers a lot of things, and it really rubbed off on them, and my fellow swimmers helped me out a lot with what they learned from Mary Chris. From learning how to put on a swim cap, which I had never done, to splitting a lane and learning how to circle swim, to counting laps. There was all kinds of things that my fellow swimmers helped me with. And a lot of them learned those things from Mary Chris. It's part of having a community. It's everybody helping out because they just love to swim. I learned swim culture from Mary Chris and the other swimmers who learned from her. Now, a lot of other swimmers also had learned some things in high school, and I think they took to Mary Chris very quickly. I think they recognized her as a solid coach right away. Another thing I learned from Mary Chris and the other swimmers was how to speak swim. Yes, I just said that. How to speak swim. As if it's a language. Yes, how to speak swim. How to speak swim is a phrase that I heard early on in my swim journey. It is going to be a great title for my swim memoir someday, too, I'll tell you. Anyways, speaking swim means understanding written and spoken directions during a swim workout. That's my definition. It's not in a dictionary that I know of. If you look at a dry erase board with a swim workout on it, you need to understand what you're looking at. And I didn't at first. So the whole point is if the coach tells you what to do next, You need to be able to understand it by looking at it or listening to it. So you have to be able to run with it or swim with it, I guess would be the phrase. I also had to learn other things, like how to read a clock a little differently. They have these swim clocks on the swim deck, and it goes just up to 60 seconds. Mary Chris would write these great workouts on the dry erase boards, but they kind of had to be translated for me at first when it came to the clock piece. I didn't know what I was looking at. For example, it said 0 and then a colon and then the number 15, which meant 15 seconds of rest. Now, depending how it was phrased, maybe it was before or after something. But, anyways, I didn't know why it was there, and somebody had to clue me in. And then she would often tell us we're doing 100-yard repeats at the top or the bottom of the next minute. And I didn't know what that meant at first, but she clued me in. And of course, all of my fellow swimmers would reinforce it. And, repetition is a great way to learn. I learned a lot. I also learned that swim workouts usually have several parts, like the warm up, the main set, sprints, loosen down or cool down, etc. I didn't know that. I should have known that there was a warm up and then like a main part and a cool down because I ran cross country and that's what we did. But, anyways, you kind of learn by looking at the workout on the dry erase board what you're looking at. This easy part at the beginning is the warm up, the main set is this, and then there's the cool down. Swimming has its own language. Who knew? I just took a break. Now that I'm back, what I'd like to do is take a minute to mention some of my fellow swimmers. Mary Chris introduced me to a lot of people. She had a way of organizing swimmers of similar speeds into lanes. I had worked my way from the slow swimmers in the intermediate class to the fastest. And then I had to start over when I got to the advanced lap swim class and work my way on up. And by the time I hit my stride, I was in the second to the fastest lane, and I felt like I was in the right place. Now, as I worked my way up, from intermediate class, the slow lane to the fast lane, and then advanced class from the slow lane to the faster lanes, I met all these swimmers. And I know I'm going to leave some people out. It's not intentional, but I do want to name some of the swimmers who were part of the Fort Meigs YMCA swim community as I was getting started. Some of the first swimmers that I met were Sally Galagoski, of course, Marcia Eck, Trina Eiliff, and Joan Fector. And I gotta mention Kate Ross too, because she made quite the impression on me. She brought her homeschooled teenage daughter Lucy to swim with us. It was kind of like her gym class, maybe. I don't know. I'm making that up, but it might have been. Lucy grew up in the pool with us. We got to watch her year over year getting faster and more grown up. And Lucy is getting married this year. So, congratulations to the whole entire Ross family. It has been a joy watching Lucy grow up. In advanced lap swim class, I met a gal named Jen Bauer. I don't know if you are a longtime listener or not, but I am a motorcycle rider. And one day I had come in missing a nail because I had a little oopsie on one of my bikes. It walked it down the driveway without me, and I was still holding it. So I fell down and lost a fingernail. And not too much happened to the bike, but it was a dumb problem to have. And I walked in upset, and my finger hurt in that chlorinated water, even though I wrapped it up real good. And I remember telling this girl in my lane, Jen Bauer, I lost a nail because I fell off my bike. And it turned out that Jen was a wounded warrior, and she ended up being a wounded warrior because she had a motorcycle accident. Jen had rehabilitated through the Wounded Warrior program, and she trained with our advanced lap swim class so she could participate in the Wounded Warrior Games in 2016. Because I had a problem and I disclosed it, I made a friend for life. And that was a awesome thing. Jen now lives in Anchorage, Alaska. Hi, Jen, if you're listening to this. And she's one of the amazing people that I met through the Fort Meigs lap swim community. I'm going to name drop some more names here. Callie Sawaya, Rachel Kirkham, and Jocelyn Atkinson. They were longtime classmates, and I loved swimming with them. I actually swam with Rachel quite a few times on Saturdays, and it was a lot of fun. I met a few really fast swimmers, too many to mention. I think Kate Brown was one of them, definitely Kylie Filipiak, Lindy Woods, Keely Lorenz, and Michelle Dalton. They were probably the fastest of all of us. They were a joy to watch, definitely faster than me. And then we had Lindy's husband, Michael, join us for a little while. Michael is an excellent athlete, but he was new to swimming. So it was kind of interesting to see Lindy on one side of the pool and Michael on the other. Two other swim couples that come to mind are Henning and Julian Schroeder and Doug and Sue Leonard. And I think there's another couple, Jeannie and Tom Wiles. We've had a lot of swim couples, and it's kind of cool to see. We had lots of other students that came kind of later in the game, maybe, closer to the pandemic or slightly after that. Sarah Anderson, Dr. Christina Ellis, Jennifer Vickers, Lucia Sharp, too. I remember her first time doing fly. That was exciting. We got to share a lot of first times, doing certain things together. Mary Chris, of course, provided mentorship, but we were the cheering section, totally. We had Nyla Weber join us. I think it was right after the pandemic. We had some men swimming with us as well. It was mostly us women, but we had Jim Nitz, Tom Wiles, and Chase Gottschalk until he left for the Army, I believe. Those were some of the men in our group. Whether someone was fast, new, competitive, social, or just trying to get in a good workout, there was a place for them at the Fort Meigs YMCA swimming pool. Mary Chris introduced me to so many swimmers, and, it just was our swim family. That's a good way to put it. Mary Chris coached us all, but she kind of stitched together a swim family too. I have so many fond memories from swimming with Mary Chris and all the other swimmers, my swim family. Let me give you just a few memories from my swim journal. We played games during class, like backstroke races with pumpkins on our foreheads at Halloween time. I think we were working on keeping the right posture, but I think we also did races too. We did handstands to see who could make it the furthest with one breath. We did somersaults in the water to see who could do the most with one breath. And I think Mary Chris won most of the time. Okay, other memories. We had potlucks in the conference room at the Fort Meigs YMCA and Christmas parties at Sally's house. Sally had such a great house for entertaining. She still does. We competed in swim meets at the Eastern YMCA in Oregon, Ohio, and at a high school, I believe it was, in West Bloomfield, Michigan. I had to learn how to dive off of blocks in order to compete. And I had to learn how to keep my goggles on after I jumped off the blocks. They would fall off so many times. Oh, I still am not very good at it, to be honest. At the swim meets, we earned ribbons for first, second, and third place finishes. I have quite a few, and I earned those. I'm proud of them. So, yeah, I'm going to keep them. I have an old basket where I keep worn out swimsuits or extra swim caps and things like that. And I used a binder clip to clip the ribbons to that basket. So, yeah, I know right where they're at. One of the most fun parts of the swim meet was the relay races at the end. That was my favorite part anyway. It was better than earning a ribbon for, winning a race. Relays made me feel like I was a kid again. Relays are awesome. Other memories, we logged our miles for the 100-mile lap swim club, and we had picture days where we wore our shirts that we earned for the 100-mile lap swim club, and we took group pictures, and I still have so many of them. And of course, Mary Chris is prominently placed in them. So many good memories captured with cameras. I've got two more memories that I'm going to share, and then I'll move on. We did a 12 days of Christmas workout around Christmas time. The 2014 version of the 12 days of Christmas workout is still my favorite workout ever. And my last memory that I'll share with you is about the birthday swim. Do you know what a birthday swim is? A birthday swim is when you swim 100 yards for every year of your life. I am currently 47. My birthday's next month in July. So if I want to do a birthday swim, I need to swim 4,800 yards. Yikes. It's going to take me a long time. I'm not really in that good of shape anymore, so I don't know if I'll do that. But I learned about the birthday swim when I was at the Fort Meigs YMCA in the advanced lap swim group. It might have been Kylie that told me about it, but I believe Mary Chris confirmed it's a thing. That's the end of some of the memories that I wanted to share with you. Any good coach, like Mary Chris, doesn't go into coaching for fame or glory. I know I opened up this episode talking about the Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund. She never went into coaching to get a fund named after her. People like Mary Chris coach because they love the sport. And I know that she loves swimming and she loves watching her athletes thrive. She's a role model, and I don't use that title lightly. She was in the water just about as much as she was on the deck, like on the side of the pool coaching us. She was a swimming role model. Great teacher. She just knew what to say, whether she was in the pool demonstrating or coaching from the deck, pointing out something that could use improvement. For example, I remember one time I was swimming the backstroke and she said I was swimming too flat. I didn't know what that meant, but she had a good point. Once she explained it, she talked about how I needed to rotate my torso as I swam. Who knew? But once I picked up on the right technique, of course, I was faster and my shoulders hurt less. I had some shoulder pain because I didn't realize I was pulling really hard from a flat position. And, anyways, once I learned how to do it right, my shoulders hurt less. She knew something needed improvement and she knew just what to say. I appreciated that. I have a few things left on my list to talk about, and then I will wrap this up. The next thing I want to talk about is how swimming with the Fort Meigs YMCA adult lap swim group trained a lot of us for triathlons. Without going into much detail, there are a number of triathletes in that group. And I remember Mary Chris was, I think, a very proud coach when she heard about how many of us were able to participate in triathlons because of what she taught us as swimmers in her swim classes. I think she knew she really prepared us to race. I know I couldn't have done the swim part of my triathlons without Mary Chris's coaching, and I really appreciated her support and encouragement. And she was really proud of us when we would all tell her what we accomplished. Even though most of this episode has been about me talking about how Mary Chris coached us as adults at the Fort Meigs YMCA, she also coached the Fort Meigs Stingrays swim team there at the Fort Meigs YMCA, both the boys and the girls. In fact, I think she recruited some of the swim kids' parents to be in our adult lap swim classes. She recognized them. She was probably shooting the breeze with them, and then she probably said, "Hey, you should come swim with us." I think that's how we got Keely Lorenz, anyways. Speaking of the stingrays, if you've ever been to the Fort Meigs YMCA lap pool, you know that there are records, swim records on the walls, meaning the stingrays, the Fort Meigs YMCA Stingray swim team. That's the kids swimmers. They have a lot of records on the walls, and then the Perrysburg High School kids have records as well. Mary Chris gave a lot of young swimmers a good start in the pool, and those kids are fast. I have compared my times to the high school kid times. They're so fast. Mary Chris obviously loves swimming, and she has helped so many people in Perrysburg and the greater Toledo area enjoy swimming too. From the young to the old, she is quite the coach, and she is a servant leader of the highest caliber. She doesn't just help people, she helps people well. She does it well. That kind of selflessness is just one reason why so many people love her. We have a friend in Mary Chris, a friend and a coach. Many of us swimmers have had the opportunity to give back in small ways over the years, and Mary Chris has been humble enough to let us play our part. For example, I started a Facebook group so we could post our workouts, photos, and videos. And man, is it fun looking back on what we all looked like 10 years ago swimming. Whether it's the 100-mile lap swim club group photos or races that we would do during class, there's so much good material to look back on. Sally Galagaski hosted so many Christmas parties at her house and one notable summer gathering as well. All of us have pitched in to buy her Christmas gifts, not out of obligation either. It's because we love her. We had a swimmer named Lillian at one point, and Lillian typed up and laminated workouts for all of us to enjoy in case we came in on a weekend or a day when we didn't have class and we needed a workout. The YMCA let us use the conference room for potlucks many times after class. We would all just shower off, put some clothes on, and we had our potluck stuff already waiting for us. And Trisha Halstead, she did something that really helped a lot of us. She upgraded the dry erase boards that our class uses so that Mary Chris could write larger on there and we could see it better. There are too many kindnesses to mention, but I must say that many of us swimmers have thankfully had an opportunity to give back along the way as well. Sadly, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, a lot of things closed, including our ability to meet up for the class the way that we used to. I really missed it. The pandemic was hard, anyways, but to take away that physical outlet, to be able to go have a nice workout, pound the water, as Mary Chris used to say, that was hard. And then that social system, we had a community. We enjoyed showing up with each other to work out and see what each other was up to. And it was just such a loss. And then around that time, back in 2020, Mary Chris also received her cancer diagnosis. More than 6 years later, she's still living with cancer and very much loved by the swim community she helped create. But I know she's not able to swim as much as she'd like. Whenever we get a chance to swim together, I thoroughly enjoy it. I think because we've had such good times and she is living with cancer now, that makes this Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund so meaningful. She is so loved by the swim community in Perrysburg. The Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund is not just about one person's name or an endowment. It's about recognizing the kind of impact one person like Mary Chris can have when she shows up, welcomes people, teaches them, encourages them, and helps them believe they belong. Mary Chris helped build a culture of swimming at the Fort Meigs YMCA. She taught kids, she coached adults, she encouraged beginners, she supported competitors, and she made the pool feel like a community. As I record this on June 25th, 2026, I want to celebrate Mary Chris K for helping me live some of the healthiest and happiest years of my life. She introduced me to the swim community at the Fort Meigs YMCA. She helped me become a better swimmer, and she has become a lifelong friend. Thank you, Mary Chris. And thank you for listening to the Perrysburg Podcast, episode 154. I made it through without crying. Hooray! The show notes are on perrysburgpodcast.com. I am getting a little misty, though. In the show notes, you will find a link to donate to the Mary Chris K Aquatics Fund, along with links to the Fort Meigs YMCA, the Greater Toledo Community Foundation, our newsletter for the podcast here, and more. If you know someone who needs to hear this episode, please share it with them. And if you like this podcast, subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube so you never miss an episode. Thank you very much for listening today. I'll talk to you next week.